My name is Natalie Hartman. I'm 32 years old, and until the very end, I believed that there would come that moment, a sacred one, whispered in every book, every film, when you stand at the altar's threshold and feel the ground slip from beneath your feet, lifted and carried upward by a vast, ringing wave of joy that makes your fingertips tremble, even though you trust the person waiting for you at the end of this path with complete trust. I didn't feel it. I didn't feel that trepidation. Not because of Mark. God, I love Mark. I still do, for that matter. He was the only part of this whole mad circus that felt solid, real, like an anchor in a stormy sea. And everything else, everything around me, felt crooked, lopsided, as if the room were tilted at a barely perceptible, drunken angle, and only I, holding my breath, noticed it. Let me back up a bit. By day, I'm a software consultant, a creature of neat spreadsheets, endless bug tickets, and the colorful blocks of a shared calendar. And by night, I'm a sandwich snob. Yes, I will judge your soul by the way you layer prosciutto, spread mayo, and slice tomato. I grew up in Michigan, the middle child, the invisible layer in the family hierarchy. My older sister Heather is a natural-born golden girl, a cheerleader, a future lawyer who got a marriage proposal in Paris under the shimmering Eiffel Tower. My parents cried like they were at a funeral when she graduated. When I graduated, my mother only asked if I got sunburned during the ceremony. This is not a joke. That comment still hangs under my graduation photo on Facebook. Our tomato girl. Heather and I were never close. She has this gift of turning every action into something that impresses others rather than irritates them. Heather has presence. When she walks into a room, you feel her, my mom always says. Yeah, mostly because she prefaces her entrance with a fanfare worthy of a Beyoncé tour. My younger brother Kyle is a classic, oops, surprise! He got away with everything simply because he was the last one. And what can I say? A filler season, a prologue to someone else's more interesting story. So when Mark proposed to me, I held a single, fragile, gossamer hope. Maybe this time my family would be on my side. It wasn't Heather's style to make toasts to herself. Just be. To sit in these chairs, chests out, clapping at the right moments, remembering that this day belongs to me too. Mark proposed, handing over a thrift store ring he'd been saving for months. He was shaking, kneeling in the middle of our tiny kitchen between a mountain of unwashed dishes and a half-burnt frozen pizza. I said yes before he even finished the question. He was my person. But my family? They weren't my people. Not really. We started planning the wedding. Nothing grand, 30 guests tops. We wanted something warm, personal, not some viral Pinterest picture. Mark's family flew in from Colorado, 12 of them, all so sincere. His father burst into tears the first time he saw me in a dress. His mother secretly downloaded photos onto her tablet, like a spy on a mission. His cousin Zoe, the one who wears braces at 30 and is proud of it, brought a silly but thoughtful gift and cracked 3 jokes about wedding night survival kits. And every conversation I had with my family was like background static. A veritable earthquake struck the group chat from Heather. Oh my God, people, the baby shower is set. Brunch is at 11 a.m., June 12th. Clear your calendars. I stared at the screen and my heart just stopped. June 12th. My wedding reception was scheduled for June 12th. Same city, same time. I messaged her directly. Hey, it's my wedding day and the reception time. She replied 2 seconds later. Nat, it's just brunch. It'll be over before your dinner. Right, because nothing says relax like the knowledge that your family will be downing mimosas so they can possibly make it to your vows. Mark tried to be optimistic. Maybe it's just an unfortunate coincidence, he said, patting my shoulder. I'm sure they'll figure out how to be in 2 places at once. But I knew it. We weren't the kind of family where they'd make everything up. We were the kind of family where I had to figure out how to work around Heather's schedule. 2 weeks before the big day, a text came from my mom. Darling, we're so proud of you. Have you seen the cupcakes Heather baked? Maybe you'll stop by before the ceremony? I stared at those lines for so long, the screen went blank. No, need help with the decor? No, how are you feeling, honey? Just cupcakes. And a fleeting offer to sneak into my sister's children's party, like a side quest on the way to my own wedding. I showed the text to Mark. He laughed so hard he almost burst into tears. I didn't laugh, because somewhere deep down, I already knew the outcome, and it wasn't in my favor. And then the day came. What was I supposed to think about? About my vows. About how I'd cry when Mark saw me. Spoiler, I cried. It was ugly, hysterical, so much so that the mascara danced across my cheeks. But as I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing out the now perfectly smoothed fabric of my dress, only one thought pounded in my head. How many seats on my side will be empty? The ceremony itself was beautiful. Mark's brother had built an arch for us. The sun streamed through the tall windows, bathing everything in honeyed light. And for a moment, it didn't matter who wasn't there. Then came the reception. The hall was divided in two, a long room, tables on either side of the dance floor. Mark's side was buzzing like a disturbed beehive. Laughter, the clinking of glasses, applause. Zoe staged an impromptu karaoke session with the microphone she accidentally brought along. My side. 6 people. 2 were college friends, lost and confused. One was Doris's former neighbor, who brought a copy of The Receptions Are So Long, Darling. The other 3 were colleagues, whose main motivation was the free bar and checking to see if Mark's handsome cousin was single. I stood in the middle of this celebration, amidst the general merriment, which seemed to be separated from me by an invisible glass wall, and tried to pretend the empty chairs were nothing, that I didn't count them, didn't feel their silent, indifferent reproach. But that wasn't true. It mattered. It mattered terribly, because for 32 years the promise, "We are always with you," had resounded within me, and now I was looking at its material embodiment, a neat row of empty, polished chairs, like tombstones to unborn hopes. The DJ played September by Earth, Wind & Fire, my song. The dance floor on Mark's side exploded with movement. His cousin was doing the worm routine. Grandma was trying to impersonate a robot. Someone was doing a jaunty conga line. Meanwhile, my mom was posting Instagram stories from Heather's baby shower. Tiny booties, an avocado-shaped cake, and a caption burned into my retinas. "This is it, a true celebration of life. Our little girl is going to be a mommy soon." Not a tag, not a mention, not even a simple "Congratulations, Natalie and Mark." I stood behind the DJ booth, pretending to delve into the playlist while scrolling through her feed over and over again. Every image was a slap in the face. There was Heather, languidly hugging the giant letters O and baby. There was Heather, raising a glass of apple juice, her eyes shining like a saint. There was Heather, laughing uproariously over a gift set called Poop Explosion. And underneath it all, my mom's commentary, full of tearful delight, as if Louis C.K. were performing. I clutched the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white, and I didn't notice Mark approaching until he touched my hand, wrapping his fingers around mine. "They'll regret this someday," he whispered so quietly the words were drowned out by the bass line. Not today, but someday. I didn't answer, not because I doubted it, but because at that very moment the phone shuddered in my palm again, and again, and again. At first, a wild, treacherous hope crept into my numb head. Maybe someone had finally seen the light. Maybe among those vibrations was a message, "Stuck in traffic, we'll be there in 10. No. On the screen, Dad. 12 missed calls. 13. 18. When I finally looked closely, the number froze at 51 missed calls and 1 text. Urgent. Call now. The bass drum of a new song crashed into the room at the exact moment my stomach dropped. The lights became ghostly and flickering. The crowd on Mark's side exploded in applause, and the phone in my hand turned into a sticky, splashing grenade. I muted it. I was sick of dealing with their marital crises in a $3,000 wedding dress. I tried to ignore it, honestly. Mark and I cut the cake, chocolate velvet with raspberry curd, and smiled for endless photos with his parents, his aunts, and Zoe, who was yelling from behind the photographer, "Come on, look aggressively in love, damn it!" But the icy, itchy anxiety in my chest wouldn't subside. My family never called 51 times in a row. Never. 3 calls max when Heather's Wi-Fi was glitching and she couldn't post a story, or when Dad was furious because he couldn't find the HDMI button on the remote. I slipped out the side door as dessert was being served. The night air was cool and quiet, making the voice in my head deafening. I looked at the screen, then at the dark outlines of the parking lot, and back at the screen. My finger trembled and I pressed call. Beep. Second. Click. "Finally, damn it," my dad's voice barked, stripped of all embellishment. "Where the hell have you been?" I blinked, trying to gather my scattered thoughts. "Where do you think I am, Dad? I'm at my wedding reception." "You should have answered sooner," he snapped, his tone devoid of embarrassment. "This is an emergency." "I'm getting married," I said in a flat, alien voice. "Remember? You even seemed to confirm your presence, and then you disappeared." A pause hung heavy. Thick. Not a hint of apology. Of course. Instead, he changed tack. "Heather's in labor," he managed. The world froze. What? "At the baby shower. Contractions. Premature. We're at the hospital. They called an ambulance. Mom's here. Kyle's here. And Heather, she's asking for you. You need to come." I looked at my watch. 8:42 p.m. My wedding dinner was in full swing. "You're calling me," I said slowly, forcing out each word, "from the hospital, where you all fled from my sister's party on my wedding day, to tell me I have to leave my own reception?" "She's scared, Natalie. She needs her sister." "And I needed my parents," I blurted out, my voice cracking. "I wanted my family to take the very seats I reserved for them. I wanted you to show up for me just once, without forcing me to share the stage with Heather." "You're being incredibly dramatic," he dismissed. "This is a baby's life." "No," I said suddenly, and an unexpected calm washed over me like an icy wave. "I'm finally speaking without drama. I'm telling the truth." Silence. And through it, distant but recognizable sounds. The intermittent beep of the monitor, the muffled voice of the nurse, the stifled sob of my mother. Then the phone was intercepted. "Natalie, darling, we understand how this looks." My mother's voice was wet with tears, guilty and at the same time stubborn. "But she's our baby. You know how dangerous early labor is, and she's asking about you. She wants to see you." "I was asking about you," I whispered. "I asked you to come and share this day with me, and you chose brunch with diapers and duck cupcakes." "She's giving us a granddaughter, Natalie," Mom said, her voice carrying that note of sacred duty that made everything else pale. "It's a miracle." "And I'm giving you a son-in-law," I replied. "A new family. For one day." The silence stretched on for so long that I thought the connection had been lost. You can still come," Mom finally managed to say. "She would be so happy. We all would be." I turned toward the building. Warm, golden light poured through the windows, and I caught a snatch of laughter, loud, carefree, like Markov's. Somewhere out there, he was probably already looking for me. And again, like a haunting image, the image of empty tables on my side, set with untouched cutlery, surfaced. "I'm not coming, Mom." "Natalie, don't be selfish." "I'm not selfish," I said quietly, but very clearly. "I'm simply choosing myself for the first time in my life. And Mark. Our family." And I hung up. Just hung up. For a long moment, I stood there on the cold parking lot asphalt, my dress billowing around my legs like a silent, white reproach, breathing as if the air were made of shards of glass. Then I wiped my face with my palms, took a deep breath, and went back inside. Mark met me at the door. He saw everything in my face immediately. "Well?" was all he asked. I shook my head. He simply nodded, briefly, understandingly, as if he'd been expecting this very answer all along and was ready to accept it. In the dining room, the planner dimmed the lights, the fairy lights came on, and dessert plates with our initials appeared on the tables, even the half-empty ones. Mark led me to our table and handed me a cupcake. Not the one on the shared cake, but a separate one, a chocolate one with raspberry icing, which, as it turned out, he'd baked himself, in secret, from me. "Eat this," he ordered softly, "or I swear I'll force-feed you it, right here in front of everyone." I snorted, a hoarse, uncertain sound that suddenly turned into laughter, bordering on hysteria. "I told them I wasn't going," I breathed out when the laughter died down. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." The DJ played a slow song. The dance floor emptied. Everyone sat at the tables. Mark took my hand and led me to the center of the dance floor. We danced alone in the middle of this oversized room under the gaze of everyone. Empty seats on one side, crowded, noisy, and vibrant on the other. It should have felt tragic, a bitter ending. But instead, I pressed my cheek against Mark's shoulder, feeling a strange, painful purity for the first time in my life. It was as if someone had reset the game I was always losing. I closed my eyes and thought, if this is my family, these people laughing and crying with happiness behind us, then maybe this is the only family I've ever truly needed. I had no idea that the real consequences of this choice hadn't even begun. The next morning, I woke to the insistent, incessant vibration of my phone on the nightstand. For half a second, in Mark's warm embrace, in the tangled sheets of an expensive hotel room, I forgot what day it was. Thin stripes of morning sunlight filtered through the cracks in the curtains, promising a quiet, lazy Sunday. Then I saw the screen. Family chat, 74 new messages. My stomach sank into a cold knot. I unlocked the phone. And there she was, Heather. Radiant, tired, but incredibly beautiful, as she always did, even in a hospital gown. She held a small pink bundle to her chest. Photo after photo scrolled before my eyes. Mom kissing the tiny crown. Dad holding the baby with a pioneering look. Kyle making a silly face. The captions from Mom flew one after another. "Our brave girl, a birth without an epidural, just fortitude and love. Welcome to our world, little Angel Avery." And below, a cascade of comments. "She's beautiful. I'm so happy for you, Heather. What a special day for your family. Congratulations, Grandma and Grandpa." Not a word. Not a single mention. Not a single line like, "By the way, Natalie and Mark celebrated something yesterday, too." I wasn't even tagged. And then a new message arrived. From Kyle. "Hey guys, she finally gave birth. Everyone's going crazy here. Where were you guys yesterday, by the way?" I froze, staring at the screen, feeling some dark, thick lava boiling inside me. Where was I? I typed a reply, my fingers flying across the glass like sparks. "At your own wedding, Kyle. The very event you swore you wouldn't miss for anything, as long as it, quote, had an open bar and at least one hot bridesmaid." The words swam before my eyes, blurring into blurry spots. I felt Mark stirring beside me, his warm breath in my hair. "Good morning," he muttered in a hoarse, sleepy voice, rolling over and rubbing his eyes. "What time is it?" His gaze focused on my face, and he immediately frowned. All sleep vanished. What happened? I silently turned the screen toward him. He picked up his phone, scrolled for a few seconds, and I saw his jaw tense, his cheekbones outlined under his skin. "Wow," he said evenly, without intonation. "They really went for the total denial tactic. It's as if the wedding never happened." At that moment, a new message popped up. From Dad. Personally, to me. "You should have been here. She was asking about you. You really let her down." Something in my chest froze and sank down. A heavy, sharp shard. I remembered the empty chairs, my mom's note about a real holiday. Mark saw it too. His expression changed from tired indignation to something sharper, pure, silent disgust. Are they kidding?" he breathed. But there was no question in his voice. The old me, the one who'd tiptoed around their feelings for years, rushed forward to justify herself, to find the right words that would finally get through. But the other me, the one who'd decided to stay and dance yesterday, straightened up. Wordlessly, I picked up my phone, opened the settings, and found my father's contact information. My finger hovered over the block number button. My heart pounded like a cage. Not forever, I whispered to myself. Just for now. I didn't need an epic, dramatic breakup. I needed their voices, their toxic, all-explaining guilt to stop living in my head as if they owned me. Mark watched silently. His silence was a question. "Are you okay?" "No," I admitted honestly, "but I think that's how it should be." He nodded, paused, and then reached for his phone. "What are you doing?" I asked, though I had a hunch. He opened that damned group chat. I saw his thumb quickly and decisively tap out the text. "Mark's here. I've been trying not to interfere, but I can't stand it anymore. Yesterday, Natalie walked into a room where her side resembled the waiting room of the most boring registry office, because almost all of you chose a baby shower over her wedding. And now you blame her for not ditching her own reception and rushing to the hospital? That's not love. That's emotional vampirism." My breath caught in my throat. "Mark, isn't that too much?" I breathed out. "Not enough," he muttered, but before he could hit send, the dots in the chat began to twitch. It was Kyle. "Not the time, man. Don't make it complicated." Then Mom. "Mark, we're all on edge right now. This isn't about picking sides." And again, Dad. "We love all our children equally. It's just not the right time." That phrase, it worked like a trigger. "We love everyone equally" is the mantra of parents who don't truly love anyone. I snatched the phone from Mark's hand. My own finger was now flying across the keyboard, cold and precise. "If you love us equally, please explain why there were 27 people at Heather's baby shower and 6 at my wedding. And please don't talk about scheduling conflicts. You set the date. You agreed. You've known for 6 months when my wedding would be." The silence in the chat became deafening. Typing, bubbles appeared and melted. Finally, Heather answered. Her tone was like smooth, polished ice. "I'm sorry you felt unsupported, Nat, but yesterday was all about the baby. It doesn't have to be all about you." I laughed loudly, shortly, and harshly. The sound was unpleasant even to my own ears. "Felt unsupported?" I recited through clenched teeth. "Did she take a course in passive-aggressive gaslighting?" "I think she's got a natural talent," Mark snorted darkly. I dialed again, no longer holding back. "It's not a feeling, Heather. It's math. It's a row of empty chairs. It's a toast no one offered. It's 51 missed calls that weren't congratulations, but yet another demand to drop everything for you." And before anyone could answer, I minimized the chat. I didn't log out. I simply turned off notifications, turned the volume down to minimum. I placed the phone face down on the nightstand and exhaled. My hands were shaking, but through this adrenaline-fueled noise, a strange, new silence penetrated. "We don't owe them anything," Mark said quietly, but firmly. "No explanations." "I know," I replied. "I know." And for the first time in probably my entire life, I almost believed it. Around noon, there was a knock on our apartment door. We weren't supposed to be home. Our plan was to be basking in post-wedding bliss at some boutique hotel where towels are folded like swans and champagne is free in the minibar. Instead, we returned early, stuffed the remains of the wedding cake into the tiny freezer, and argued about whether we really needed 3 different waffle irons in our life together. "I'll open it," Mark said, brushing breakfast crumbs off his t-shirt. A small, carefully wrapped package lay on the doorstep. No return address, just my name, written in my mother's familiar, calligraphic, too neat handwriting. A momentary visceral terror gripped me. I carried it into the kitchen and cut it open with scissors on the counter. Inside, on pink tissue paper, lay a tiny candle in a jar scented with baby powder, a miniature bottle of lotion, a rattle-shaped sugar cookie with the words, "It's a girl," written on it, and a folded note. Since you missed everything, it read, thought you'd still want a souvenir. Love, Heather. Mark's gaze shifted from the pitiful, toxic contents to my face. She couldn't, he groaned. Oh, absolutely, I replied, my voice sounding frighteningly calm. Something inside me snapped, but it didn't break. It didn't crumble. On the contrary, a strange, almost comical, crystalline clarity washed over me. What if I eat this cookie out of anger? I asked, turning my head toward him. Will I go to hell? Mark tilted his head, a sparkle flickering in his eyes. Only if you don't post it on Instagram. I took the cookie. It was perfectly decorated. Pink dots, a neat white bow, flawless cursive. My mom clearly had time for such meticulous work, unlike checking her wedding newsletter. Get your phone, I said. We're doing it. Mark's eyes lit up with excitement. Oh, we're definitely doing it. He filmed me holding up the baby rattle cookie to the camera with a smile so sharp it could have cut glass. Life hack for middle children, I said directly into the camera. When you're not invited to your own family, they send you a baby shower gift basket the next day. Hashtag not bitter, hashtag just married. And I took a big, crunching bite. We posted it on my account. Within an hour, the post had over 100 likes, mostly from Mark's family, my colleagues, and a couple of friends who, despite not knowing the full context, still sensed the drama through the screen. Your Aunt Marge just wrote, Mark said later, scrolling through the comments. I quote, I always knew I liked you more than your mother. That time, I actually laughed. The sound was a little rusty, but surprisingly light. That evening, the phone rang again, an unknown number. I was about to ignore it, but something, some sixth sense, made me answer. Hello? Natalie, is that you? Came a thin, slightly hoarse voice, but so painfully familiar. I froze. Grandma Jean? I whispered. Who else, my dear? She responded, and her voice, despite her age, held the same steely efficiency. Your father changes his number more often than I changed my hairstyle in '72, so I had to bribe your cousin Todd to get it for me. They say my granddaughter got married, and I wasn't even invited. That's a bit odd, don't you think? The emotion washed over me suddenly and with such force that it took my breath away. Tears that hadn't come yesterday or this morning now rose in my throat like a hot, salty lump. Hi, Grandma, I breathed, my voice trembling, stifled by that same lump in my throat. I saw the photos, she said, before I could recover. Yours, from the wedding. Not those stupid baby pictures, no. The ones with you. So many potato salads and ridiculous hats, enough to last a lifetime. I choked on a laugh that sounded more like a sob. You looked beautiful, she continued, a rare, sparse tenderness filling her voice. That dress, that light, and that man of yours, who looks at you as if you've hung not the moon, but an entire galaxy in the sky. I printed one out and put it on the mantelpiece, next to your grandfather's photo. My breath caught completely. You did this? Of course I did. Who else? Your father? He can yell, but it seems I never taught him to show up when needed. Don't cry now, I can hear it all over the phone. She sniffled loudly, and it was the most familiar sound in the world. Grandma, I'm old, not blind, she grumbled, and I heard the rustle of paper on the other end of the line. Listen to me, Natalie. If they try to guilt trip you, and they will, I know them, let them wallow in their guilt. This little one will be swathed in love for the rest of her days, and she'll be fine. And what you did yesterday, staying at your wedding with those who were happy to see you, that's the truth. The only one that matters. My eyes were shining, and hot, salty streaks ran down my cheeks. Thank you, Grandma, I whispered. And don't you dare tell anyone I said that, she added in a conspiratorial whisper. But between you and me, I've seen your cupcakes in photos, and that fancy avocado cake of Heather's just eclipsed it. Her frosting ran like Pinterest had vanished. I laughed through my tears and wiped my cheeks with the back of my hand. That's probably the best compliment I've ever received. Well, great. Remember that. I love you, baby, and I'm proud of you, not just for getting married, but for finally drawing the line. The fat one. After we hung up, I stood in the kitchen for a long time, clutching the now silent phone to my chest as if it were a magical talisman, just delivered from a past where I was loved after all. Mark came in, wiping his hands on a towel. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I answered quietly, and it wasn't a lie. I think for the first time in a long time, yes. Not all the branches of my family tree were rotten, but the important thing was I no longer had to clamber over them, pretending not to hear them crack and break under my feet. Before we'd finished unloading the wedding gifts from the trunk, my phone vibrated again. A notification. I'd been tagged in a photo on Facebook. Every instinct screamed, "Don't look." But curiosity is a disease, and I was hopelessly infected with it. I opened the app. Collage, posted by my mother. On the left, Heather in a hospital bed, beaming like a smug fertility goddess, with a pink bundle draped over her chest. On the right is Mark and me at the altar. The photo was cropped so carelessly and rudely that half of my head and Mark's shoulder were completely missing. The caption? "What a weekend. Our family is doubly blessed. A beautiful new marriage and a precious new life. Love multiplies. Hashtag proud parents. Hashtag wedding weekdays. Hashtag double joy." I reread the text once, twice, 5 times, hoping that at some point my brain would register it as malicious satire. Mark peered over my shoulder. "Oh no," he groaned. "No, this is not an accident. No one posts things like this without malice." I scrolled down to the comments. "Congratulations, Heather. She's beautiful. What a special moment for your family. The baby is going to have the best aunt in the world." Aunt. Not Natalie. Not even Mark was mentioned. Then someone's question, like a sharp knife. "Wait, did Natalie get married this weekend?" And silence. Not a like, not a reply from my mom. I didn't comment, give it a thumbs up, or an angry emoji. I just stared until the image swam before my eyes. Mark hugged me around the waist. "Are you okay?" "No," I whispered, my voice sounding alien and flat. "I feel edited, like I've been photoshopped into someone else's party." "Because that's exactly what they were trying to do," he said quietly, kissing the top of my head. "That's the whole point." That was the feeling, cold and sickening, that lurched in my stomach. I wasn't just being overshadowed. I was glued, stitched, trimmed around the edges to fit into their idyllic picture. And this wasn't the first time. The memory hit me with such force that I winced. I was 9, and for my birthday, my parents gave me a Game Boy. I was over the moon. I'd never had anything so cool. Heather, then 12, threw such a tantrum that the neighbors were probably thinking about calling the police. My exhausted parents, desperate to calm her down, took the box from my hands and said, "Just let Heather open it for the photo, okay?" I stood in the background of that photo, smiling through my confusion and hurt, while my sister held my gift triumphantly. That photo still hangs in the hallway of their house. Heather looks happy in it. I look blurry. I hadn't thought about it in years, but the feeling was exactly the same. As if my own life was just small print in a footnote, not the title. I put the phone face down. My hands were numb. "Okay," Mark said softly but firmly. "We're leaving. Zoe and Logan invited us for drinks. Let's go and have some fun with people who aren't allergic to responsibility." I nodded. Good idea. A fantastic idea. The bar, also a haven for emotionally neglected newlyweds. Zoe noticed us immediately and waved as if she were landing a plane on the deck of an aircraft carrier. She was wearing a sequined jacket, and it was perfect. Logan, her husband, sipped a mojito with an imperturbable expression. "Oh my God," Zoe announced our arrival. "I saw that post. I'm still hiccuping from the culture shock." Logan shook his head. Double joy? More like double identity theft. Zoe gasped theatrically. "Unprecedented betrayal. Buy one joy, get another one for free." Mark snorted, without the option of refusing. I made a strangled sound, unsure whether I was laughing or crying, but acutely aware of how much I needed this moment, this venomous, life-saving laughter. Zoe leaned across the table toward me, her eyes glittering. Listen, your wedding was perfect, and your family decided to throw a competing event 10 blocks away. That's a case of the past, but to then act like you somehow outshone them is Olympic-level nonsense. Logan raised his glass. May our relatives never catch this. Mark clinked his glass with him. You're late. The quarantine didn't work. And that cropped photo, Zoe continued, baby, you weren't even the star of your own wedding photo. I had to emotionally distance myself to process that. I covered my face with my hands. Please, stop. I'm about to laugh hysterically. There she is, Zoe exclaimed triumphantly. Real laughter. She's alive. By the time we'd finished our cocktails and a basket of fries, which Zoe had called healing snacks, I felt something I hadn't felt since the ceremony, a sense of not being alone, that Mark's people, now my people, were more than just relatives by marriage. They were a living, breathing, squabbling, protective field. Zoe suddenly poked me with a potato. You know, baby, sometimes family isn't DNA. Sometimes family is the people who show up with cocktails and intelligently scold your mother. Mark squeezed my hand under the table. She's right. And I sat at that bar with people who hadn't known me since I was a baby, but treated me with more honesty and warmth than those who were obligated to love me by default. I realized something quiet and crushing. The people who chose me felt more like family than those whose love I'd spent my whole life trying to earn. Later that evening, Mark and I watched a cooking show while scrolling through honeymoon ideas on our laptop. I rested my head on his shoulder. Do you think it'll always be like this? This feeling of me against them? He shook his head, his cheek brushing my hair. It won't be against them because you've stopped playing their game. You're no longer fighting for their approval. You're just living. I thought about it. Stop playing. Stop competing. Stop begging. Stop being a blurry girl in the background. I hope you're right, I whispered. I really hope so. Mark kissed my forehead. I know I'm right. Of course, the universe, that sardonic troll, couldn't let me enjoy peace for too long. Literally, the next morning, as I was trying to concentrate on my report, a text from my father arrived, dry and businesslike, like a summons to the boss. Dad, family dinner on Sunday. Come. Not a hello, not a please, just an order. Mark, seeing it on my screen, raised an eyebrow. Want me to come with you? No, I said, feeling a cold knot in my stomach. I can handle it myself. Are you sure? I nodded, though I wasn't the least bit confident. If you go, Mom will turn you into the main villain of the saga, the one who stole their wayward daughter and turned her against the family. I need to deal with this alone. Mark leaned over and kissed my cheek, his lips warm and real. And when you get back, I'll order that pineapple pizza you hate, and you'll tell me everything. The whole play, role-playing. I smiled weakly. Deal. Little did I know that this dinner would be the very point after which nothing could be put back together. Sunday evening arrived faster than I'd wanted. Mark offered to go with me one last time, just outside the door. No, he offered 3 more times while I was putting on my jacket. But I refused. This wasn't his battle. These were those 50 pounds of family history that I would have to carry on my shoulders alone. Text me if you need an emergency evacuation, he said, handing me his jacket with the air of a gentleman bodyguard. I'll get Zoe. She'll draw the fire. Logan's stealing their car. We'll drag you out to applause. I laughed, kissed him, and stepped out into the cool twilight. But my chest felt like a steel band. My parents' house looked the same as always. A perfect lawn, a pastel wreath on the door, a porch light flickering like a warning signal. Mom opened the door before I could knock. "Hello, dear," she said quietly, and her voice held that same sticky, wine-marinated tenderness that made me sick. The dining table was set with museum-quality care. China, crystal, napkins folded like swans. The centerpiece was a cluster of dried flowers that I would have sworn were leftover decorations from that very baby shower. Everyone was already seated. Heather sat like a young queen holding the baby in the crook of her arm, basking in the quiet rapture of a mother. Kyle, glued to his phone, looked as if watching motherhood had already bored him to death. My father stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, like a CEO ready to debrief. "Glad you came," he said, and it sounded like, "We've got you covered." We pretended to be normal for a few minutes. We passed around the chicken and mashed potatoes. Heather cooed over the package. Mom sighed, describing how exhausted she'd been over the emotional weekend, as if she'd been giving birth and not just eating cupcakes. Then Dad cleared his throat, and the air in the room grew heavy, like before a thunderstorm. "We wanted to discuss something," he began. There it was. Mom folded her hands as if praying. "We know you were hurt," she began carefully, "because of how things turned out." "Because of how you all acted," I corrected. My voice was even, and it surprised even me. Her eyes sparkled. "We never meant to hurt you." "You know what else hurts?" I asked, looking her straight in the face. "When you're just not there." Heather rolled her eyes with enough drama to fill a soap opera. "Oh my God, are we still here? The baby's born!" "Yes, Heather, we're still here," I said, not taking my eyes off my mother. Because on the most important day of my life, I walked into the hall and saw a ghost town on my side. And while Mark's family was dancing, my own mom was posting an avocado cake on Instagram with the caption, "A real celebration." Kyle muttered under his breath, "Drama." "You could have rescheduled the party," I continued, addressing everyone, "or at least come to the ceremony, or the toasts, anything." Mom looked deeply offended. "But Heather went into labor." "No," I cut her off sharply. "Heather went into labor after her shower. She blew up balloons and ate quiche during the shower. That's a fact." Deadly silence. It was impossible to argue. My father leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "But we're here now, aren't we? Can't we just move on?" "We can," I said, my voice finally cracking. "But first, you need to hear something." I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket. Their eyes, full of curiosity and fear, stared at my hand, as if I were about to pull out a gun or a subpoena. I pulled out a folded piece of paper, and my heart pounded, beating out of my chest. "Here," I said quietly, unfolding it. "The speech, the one I wrote for my wedding, the one I never got to give." Mom's eyes filled with tears. Heather began to examine her cuticles. Kyle finally looked up from his phone. I took a deep breath and began to read. Not the one that was actually there, but the one that was in my heart. As a child, I thought love was just being. Sitting through a school play, even if your role was a silent tree. Clapping at the science fair, even if your papier-mâché volcano never erupted. Being at a birthday party, just because, no strings attached. I almost never got to experience that, but somehow I never stopped hoping. And then I met Mark. Mark always showed up. On good days, on bad days, during my work-related tantrums, in every small, insignificant, boring, messy moment. He stayed. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to. Love isn't saying, "I'm proud of you." Love is saying, "I'm here. I'm staying. I won't disappear when it gets inconvenient." The silence in the room fell, thick and oppressive, as I folded the paper. Mom was crying silently. Dad looked stunned. Kyle stared at the table. Heather was scrolling on her phone again, but I could see her hand shaking. I placed the scribbled paper next to the untouched plate. I wrote this for my wedding, but I couldn't read it because those for whom these words were written weren't there. I stood up. The chair creaked unpleasantly. "Thank you for dinner," I said, "but food won't fix anything, and I won't beg you to come over anymore." I turned and headed for the door. "Natalie, please," Mom called, her voice breaking. But I was already outside, and the night air, cold and crisp, felt truly clean for the first time in years. 2 days later, a text from Heather arrived. "Are you seriously acting like we ruined your life by missing one event? You're a grown woman. Crying over empty chairs? You've got to get over it." I didn't answer. Then another. "You clearly need help." Silence again from me. And the third, the final shot, "At least I didn't make my wedding the tragedy of all time." This time, I turned the phone face up and watched each new notification flicker on and off, losing its power before I could even read it. They were no longer within my reach. The letter that changed everything arrived the following week. Mark brought home a plain white envelope with rough, textured paper. "Guess who sent us a real, paper, perfume-scented letter," he said, waving it like a flag. My heart sank when I saw the return address. Grandma Jean. Inside was a cream-colored card, her recognizable, slightly shaky handwriting. "Your wedding was beautiful. Pictures don't lie." Love was there, even if some were too blind to see it. P.S. I put something inside, for the future you're building, not the one others chose to miss. A check fell to the floor for $5,000. I covered my mouth with my hand. "Grandma, no, she couldn't." "She could," Mark whispered reverently. And she did. We stood in the middle of the kitchen, holding that piece of paper as if it were made of light itself. Because it was. No guilt, no conditions, no competition. Just love. Pure, quiet, real. We cried a little. We laughed a lot. And then we did the most poetic thing possible. We used the money to book a honeymoon. Far away, warm, with a turquoise sea and intentionally weak Wi-Fi. The last message came just before we left, as we were zipping up our suitcases. Heather sent a digital postcard invitation to the "Welcome, Baby" brunch. Mark stared at my phone screen for exactly 3 seconds. Then he picked it up, found the decline invitation button, and pressed it with the enthusiasm of someone squashing a pesky mosquito. He looked at me, a mischievous spark in his eyes. Too soon? I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him, feeling a light, free laugh welling up from deep within. "Too late," I said. And just like that, hand in hand, we walked out the door, toward the life we'd built together, toward the people who chose to be by our side, and finally, leaving behind that blurry, indistinct backdrop in which we'd spent too many years.